black truck driver goes to the jewelry store and is humiliated. The next day, he comes back as the owner. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in the city's financial center. The movement of hurried executives contrasted with the sophistication of the luxury windows on the famous Rua Aurelia, known for housing the most exclusive jewelry stores in the country. Between luxury cars and windows with reinforced security, an elderly truck driver crossed the sidewalk with firm steps. Benedito. Ferreira, 68, wore a faded plaid shirt, shabby jeans, and leather boots marked by the road. His curved brim cap hid some of his gray hair, and his sun-scarred skin betrayed a lifetime of hard work and honesty. He pushed open the glass door of the sophisticated Montclair jewelry store. The sound of the bell sounded light, but the impact of his presence was immediate. Eyes turned. First, a security guard sat in his chair with an attentive look. Then 2 attendants looked at each other, frowning. An elegantly dressed customer stepped away from the counter discreetly. And finally, the store manager, Rodrigo Lacerda, looked up from his computer and watched the man who had just entered with the same look that one casts at someone out of place. "Can I help you?" the manager asked with a fake smile, already preparing to dispatch the visitor. Benedito approached with kindness, removed his cap with respect, and said in a soft voice but full of pride, "I came to look for a jewel, a special gift for my daughter. She just passed the federal school. She will be a doctor." The tone was one of restrained joy. It was evident that this moment was important to him. Rodrigo forced a smile. "Right. We have some cheaper options on the other side of the store," and gestured discreetly to a small window far away, where the less valued pieces were. Before Benedito could answer, a younger salesman whispered to another, "I think he mistook the store for the bus station." The other laughed. Benedito listened. He pretended not. But the pain in his eyes gave away that he was. He walked to the main display case where there was a delicate gold necklace with a shimmering blue stone. His eyes lit up. "This piece here, it reminds me of my daughter's eyes." The manager hurried. "This jewel is reserved for a special customer, sir. Maybe something more appropriate?" The proper came loaded with poison. Other customers watching from a distance furrowed their brows, uncomfortable. A younger employee, Isabella, made mention of approaching to help, but was subtly restrained. By a gesture from the manager, the atmosphere became heavy, silent, tense. But Benedito did not lose his education. Not for a second. "It's okay, young man. I just wanted to look. Thank you for your time." He put his cap back on, gave a slight nod, and headed for the exit. Outside, the noise of the city remained the same. But inside Benedito, something had changed. The silent humiliation that he had carried for years, but which now mixed with indignation at seeing prejudice still so present. With the same calmness with which he entered, he walked away. But that story was still far from over. Shortly after Benedito left the Montclair jewelry store, the indoor environment returned to its usual rhythm, or almost. There was something in the air. A subtle, almost imperceptible discomfort hovered among the employees. But for manager Rodrigo, everything was just another routine occurrence. He even commented disdainfully to one of the vendors, "These guys pop up from time to time. They want to live a moment of fantasy, just to see what the other side is like." Meanwhile, on the other side of the window, Isabella, the young attendant with the sweet look, was still visibly bothered. In silence, she organized the displays, but her thoughts were on the man who had just left. For Benedito, that brief visit had enormous significance. He had spent 3 weeks straight driving the country's roads, sleeping in the back of his truck, delivering goods from the south to the northeast, racking up overtime and cutting costs. All this for a simple purpose full of love, to buy a gift that your daughter would never forget. His daughter, Rafaela, was his greatest pride. An intelligent, dedicated girl who at the age of 17 had been approved in medicine at the public university. A rare feat in the family, a historic feat. That was what Benedito wanted to celebrate, with something that could be remembered forever. A necklace, a gem, a silent message saying, "You have won, my daughter. I believe in you." But inside Montclair, his intention was reduced to a joke. Soon after his departure, one of the oldest salespeople, Marcelo, made a point of making everything even more embarrassing. "Guys, did you see the way he looked at the sapphire necklace? I thought I was going to ask if it was possible to pay in 48 installments with meal vouchers," he said, laughing to himself. Some employees laughed, others just lowered their heads. Rodrigo, the manager, added, "I'm glad we got out of this situation soon. You can't waste time with those who are not the store's audience. Our focus is on qualified customers." Isabella, who until then had remained silent, could not stand it and said firmly, "Qualified? You didn't even ask his name, nor the reason for the purchase. What if he just wanted something beautiful for someone? Special?" The room fell silent. Rodrigo just cast an impatient glance at her and went about his routine. Outside, Benedito walked slowly down the street. He wasn't sad about himself. It wasn't the first time he had been judged by his appearance. But that day it hurt more. It hurt because it was because of her daughter. Because he wanted everything to be perfect. He stopped on the sidewalk, pulled out of his pocket a small crumpled paper with notes of necklace models she had casually mentioned months ago. And there, in front of the cold windows, he made a decision, not just about the jewelry, but about what he would teach those who thought they were better. The necklace would come, but along with it would come a lesson that no one would forget. The city followed its noisy and indifferent rhythm, but inside Benedito's chest, what there was silence and heaviness. He walked for a few more blocks, taking a deep breath, trying to contain the mixture of disappointment and anger that burned, not out of wounded pride, but out of father's love. Back at the Montclair jewelry store, the laughter and whispers had subsided, but the impact of prejudice had left a mark, not only on Benedito, but also on those who witnessed it. Isabella, the young attendant with a sensitive soul, went to the bathroom for a few minutes, sat on the bench and held back tears. I didn't know that gentleman, but the way he looked at the necklace, the sparkle in the eye, the way he spoke of his daughter, the silent sincerity he carried, it was impossible not to be moved. Outside the store, Benedito sat on a bench in the square, with the annotated necklace still in his hands. She took the old cell phone from her pocket and called her daughter. "Hi, daughter. Is everything okay there?" "Yes, Dad, I was studying. But what about you? Where are you?" He hesitated for a moment, then replied with a half smile. "I'm just walking around here. I went to see some things. Then we'll talk, okay?" "Okay. I love you." "I love you too, daughter." Her voice was his motivation. It was his fuel. He hung up, closed his eyes for a moment, and remembered the promise he had made to himself. When she passed college, I would give her something special, something that showed that all the effort was worth it. At that moment, the pain of humiliation began to transform. What was once just sadness began to become purpose. Inside the store, Rodrigo still told the story to a couple of customers with a comic tone. You had to see his face looking at the necklace. I thought I was going to ask if I accepted monthly bills. The couple forced an uncomfortable smile. The truth is that not everyone thought it was funny. Employee Isabella returned to the counter, this time determined to remain silent. But something in her eyes had changed. A quiet indignation. An indignation that grows when injustice goes from joke to absurdity. Outside, Benedito stood up, looked once again at the storefront with his luxurious name, and thought, "They looked at me and saw only dust from the road, but they don't know the road I traveled to get here." And with that, he went about the day with dignity, but with a quiet plan beginning to form. That jewel was still going to be bought, but not there, and not in that way. What Benedito still didn't know is that the next day, he would return to that store, but in a way that no one would ever expect. The sun had barely risen in the sky when, the next morning, the movement on Rua Aurelia had already begun. Metal doors lifting, storefronts being polished, and hot coffee serving as fuel for Montclair employees to start another day. Rodrigo, the manager, arrived in his typical hurried style. Well-cut suit, leather briefcase in hand, and the usual arrogance in his eyes. The lost trucker episode from the previous morning was now part of his repertoire of jokes to break the ice with customers. But that day, the ice would be different. At Tiusao says, 10:02 a.m., a different car pulled up in front of the jewelry store. It wasn't an over-the-top luxury car. It was a black sedan, elegant, discreet, and silent. From the passenger seat came a tall, tied-up man who quickly opened the rear door respectfully. Benedito Ferreira came out of it. But this time, he wore no boots or plaid shirt. He wore an impeccable navy blue suit with well-polished dress shoes. Her hair was neatly combed, and while the posture was still simple, her presence now radiated something different. Quiet authority. With calm steps, he entered through the same glass door as Montclair. The security guard, who had barely noticed him the day before, immediately stood up. Rodrigo, on the other side of the store, saw the scene and took a few seconds to recognize that face. Yes, it can't be him, he murmured. But it was. The same man he had dismissed the day before now walked through the store as someone who knew the terrain. Benedito walked calmly to the main balcony. This time, the silence was instantaneous. Rodrigo composed himself and went to meet him, forcing a smile. "Sir, welcome back to Montclair. May I help you?" Benedito watched him for a moment. No rush, no hostility, just a calm and direct look. "I just came to pick up something I left here yesterday." Rodrigo laughed embarrassedly. "Of course, which play do you want to see?" "Actually," he replied, taking an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. "It's not a jewel. It is a behavior." The manager frowned, not understanding. "I left here the benefit of the doubt, and what I received was the opposite: judgment, arrogance, and disrespect." The store was absolutely silent. Employees stopped. Customers looked at each other. Some had already recognized that gentleman from the posts on the city's social networks. In recent years, Benedito Ferreira had quietly appeared in local news, reports as the founder of BF Transportes Logisticos, one of the largest transport companies in the southeast, a company that, ironically, provided logistics for several jewelry stores in the region, including Montclair. Rodrigo was already sweating. "Mr. Ferreira, allow me to apologize on behalf of the store. Yesterday was a misunderstanding." "No, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a clear and straightforward understanding of what you see when you look at someone like me. The only thing they didn't count on was that the nobody of yesterday was the owner of the property that you have been renting for more than a decade." Rodrigo turned pale. Literally. "I am Mr. Benedito Jose Ferreira. And I came first to buy the jewelry that my daughter deserves. And second, to let you know that I am re-evaluating the lease agreement with the management of Montclair." The impact was immediate. The silence of the store was now filled with tension and shame. At that moment, Isabella, the attendant who tried to help him the day before, approached. She kept her eyes downcast respectfully, but with a slight sincere smile. "Mr. Ferreira, if you will allow me, can I show you the sapphire necklace you mentioned yesterday?" Benedito smiled, this time with a light heart. "It's everything I wanted, from the beginning." While Isabella walked to the window to pick up the sapphire necklace, the same one the manager had said was reserved the day before, Benedito stood in the center of the showroom. He watched in silence. There was no arrogance in his posture, just dignity and a calm strength, like that of someone who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, but still has something to teach. Rodrigo, the manager, was still trying to regain control of the situation. He approached again with a softer tone. "Mr. Ferreira, once again. On behalf of Montclair, I would like to..." Benedito raised one hand, asking for silence. "Tell me, young man," he began, looking directly at Rodrigo. If yesterday I had come here with this same suit, this same shoe, but with the same intention of buying a piece of jewelry, would you have treated me differently? Rodrigo hesitated, but his expression answered before the mouth. The truth, sir, is that maybe so, he admitted in a thin voice. So the problem was never the intention. It was the appearance. Completed. Benedito, in a serene but firm voice. He turned to the store employees and the few customers who were now watching in absolute silence. When I was a boy, I was taught that respect was not something you earned by the clothes you wear, but by the way he treats others. But it seems that there are people who have forgotten this along the way. He paused. The atmosphere was so quiet that it was possible to hear the distant sound of a clock. I'm just a father, a man who lived life on the road carrying cargo, crossing this country from end to end. I saw a lot, but none of them taught me to judge someone by their packaging. And yet that's what they did to me here. Rodrigo lowered his eyes. One of the salespeople discreetly walked away from the scene, but everyone listened. Benedito then looked at Isabella, who was returning with the small blue velvet box in her hands. Gently, she opened it and revealed the sapphire necklace set in white gold, shiny and delicate, exactly as he remembered her daughter's eyes as a child. He picked up the piece carefully and said, "This is going to be more than a gift. It will be a symbol of how much it is worth to believe in dreams, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise. It will show my daughter that she can be whatever she wants, and that no one has the right to define someone's value just by looking." Everyone in the hall was silent. It was a lesson in humanity, of values. He looked once more at Rodrigo. I didn't come here today for revenge. I came to leave a message. Because if I had just left, this story would have died just yesterday. But there are things that need to be said so that they don't happen again. Rodrigo nodded, visibly touched. His voice almost cracked. You are absolutely right. And thank you for not turning your back. I learned more in 10 minutes here with you than in 10 years in the store. Benedito took a deep breath. He did not seek to humiliate, but to awaken conscience. He turned to Isabella. You were the only one who looked at me as a human being. So, if one day you want to work with me in the company or in a new project that I'm starting, the doors are open. Her eyes filled with tears. And so, with a gesture of kindness and respect, Benedito didn't just buy a piece of jewelry. He planted a seed of transformation in that elitist environment. That day, after the necklace was purchased, the atmosphere at Montclair Jewelry was no longer the same. The store was still shining. The windows were still shining. But what was most striking was the reflective silence that hung over everyone. Benedict's presence had left a mark deeper than any piece of gold. Rodrigo, previously confident and arrogant, was now in his office going over every detail of that meeting, with the penny finally dropping. You don't always lose a blindfold when you judge someone badly. Sometimes the opportunity to evolve is lost. At the counter, Isabella still held the blue box, now empty. The sapphire necklace had gone with its new owner, but the gesture she witnessed would never leave her memory. And unknowingly, she also had a destiny about to change. A few hours later, while organizing some papers in the system, she heard one of the security guards call her discreetly, "Girl, there's a gentleman waiting for you outside. He said that he is Mr. Benedito." She quickly wiped her hands, straightened her hair, and walked out the side door. There he was, leaning against a discreet car with an envelope in his hands, and that same serene smile. "I'm sorry to call you out here, my daughter. I just wanted to deliver this to you personally." She took the envelope with surprise and opened it. Inside, there was a handwritten note. Gratitude cannot be bought. He recognizes himself. Thank you for not seeing me as I dressed, but as I was. If you still want a change of scenery, BF Carrier will always need people who know how to see what matters. Signed, Benedito. Along with the note, there was a formal job proposal, with an above-average salary, a position as a customer service supervisor, and a career plan. Isabella was silent, moved. his eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," he replied tenderly. "Just keep being that person who sees with your heart." She nodded with a suppressed smile. "I accept, Mr. Benedito." With pride. Meanwhile, in the interior of the state, Rafaela, Benedito's daughter, arrived home after an intense week of preparatory classes at college. On the simple bed, he found a small blue box with a note. "Daughter, the world will try to make you believe that you are only worth what you wear, but its value is what it carries inside. May this jewel shine no more than you. With love, Dad," she cried. Of joy, of pride, of love. At that moment, neither she nor the jewelry store knew that the gesture of a humble and wise father would be shared by thousands of people on social networks, inspiring many others to look beyond appearances. 2 weeks have passed since the episode at the Montclair jewelry store, and in a small town in the countryside, during a simple celebration in a modest house of exposed bricks, a young woman with curly hair and bright eyes hugged her father tightly. Rafaela, now officially a medical student, had just received her gift, the sapphire necklace. But what really moved her was the gesture, the effort, the story behind the jewel. She didn't just see the sparkle of the stone. She saw the sleepless nights her father spent on the road, the kilometers traveled without complaining, the weekends postponed so that she could have a better future. And now she also knew the humiliation he experienced to be able to give her that gift. "Dad, you didn't need to go through this." "Yes, I did, daughter. Sometimes life gives us the chance to teach even when it hurts. And there is a lesson that is worth the fall." The two embraced in silence, a silence full of gratitude, pride, and love. On the other side of town, at the Montclair jewelry store, the atmosphere had also changed. Rodrigo, the manager, was now participating in a re-education program on unconscious prejudice, implemented by the chain's own management. On the office wall, there was a new guideline printed and pasted prominently: human value first. Not only did the store maintain its lease, but it received a public recommendation from Transportadora BF, which increased its reputation among other suppliers and customers. But more importantly, there was a change in culture. Rodrigo, now more humble, approached customers with a more open, more attentive look. For the first time in years, he listened more than he spoke. And as for Isabella, she had taken up her new position at BF Transportes. With a badge on her chest and a twinkle in her eye, she coordinated the service team with empathy and firmness. On the door of his office, a small board said, "Here, we don't serve people. We take care of stories." She kept a picture of the sapphire necklace in the desk drawer. It was the symbol that acting with the heart can change fate. On the internet, Benedito's story went viral after a security video from the store, leaked anonymously, showed the transformation of prejudice into respect. Thousands of comments. I was moved by this gentleman. A lesson in humility and greatness. Everyone needs a Benedito in life. And so, the story of a humble father, with calloused hands and a great soul, transformed not just one store, but many lives. Because in the end, as he himself said, a person's worth is not measured by what they wear, but for the way she treats others when she doesn't expect anything in return. If you've made it this far, take a deep breath. This is not just the story of a father. It is the story of how many of us have been judged by appearance, clothing, age, profession. Or worse, how many times have we judged someone without even asking their name? Benedito could have left that jewelry store angry. He could have kept quiet, bought the jewel elsewhere, and moved on with his life. But he chose something bigger. He chose to teach, because sometimes what the world needs is not more power. It is more awareness. And now the question is for you. Have you ever been judged by your appearance, or have you ever judged someone without realizing it? How would you treat Benedito if he came into your store, your office, your life today? Comment below. Share your story, because your experience can open someone's eyes. And if this story touched you, Share it with anyone who needs to hear it today. Who knows, you may not plant the same seed that Benedito planted. Remember, the true measure of wealth is not in the bank account, but in how you treat others when you think no one important is looking. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, look with your heart. They judged Benedict by what he wore, by the shabby cap for the road boots, by the skin marked by the sun, but they forgot something simple. Clothes change. Values, no. In their haste to appear important, they blurted out the most important thing: the character, the story, the soul. Because at the end of the day, what defines someone is not what is in the body, but what overflows from the heart. And maybe, just maybe, the man you despise today be the one who can change your life tomorrow. If this story touched you, if you felt the lump in your throat, the tear in the corner of your eye, or the anger at the injustice, so stop now and share. Not by like, by conscience, because there's someone in your feed who needs to hear that. There is a Benedito who is still ignored. There is a Rodrigo who has not yet woken up. And there is an Isabella waiting for courage to do the right thing. Comment below, I see beyond. If you believe that the world needs less appearance and more essence. And before you leave, click on that subscribe button, because here, we tell stories that not only move, we tell stories that transform. See you next time, and until then, look less with your eyes and more with the soul.